Okay, thank you for taking this time to sit down and do this interview with me. I'm going to start by just asking you some quick questions real fast. So, what is your full name?
Kenneth Ray Neill Sr.
Okay. And I'm just going to ask you, do I have permission to record this?
Yes.
Okay. So, Kenneth, where and when were you born?
I was born in 1939 in Shelbyville in a place called the Cedars, which was a company housing where my mother and father worked and lived at that time.
Okay. Who else was in your family?
I had two older sisters at the time. One of them was 5 years older than me, and one was 3 years older than me.
What were their names?
Audrey Geraldine Neill was the oldest, and then Agnes Eloise Neill was the second one, and I was the third child born to them.
Okay, cool. And do you have any younger siblings?
Yes, I have two. I have a sister, Sybil Catherine Neill, who was 2 years younger than me. And then I had a brother, Gary Alvis Neill, who was 11 years younger than me.
Okay, cool. Okay, Kenneth, what is the earliest memory you can recall? If you can do that. I know that's kind of a hard question, but...
I guess it was when we got to the farm, a farm that had belonged to my father's uncle, and he gave the farm to them in order to live with them until he passed away. He didn't have, his wife was dead, and he didn't have any children, and he thought a lot of my father, so he made an arrangement with them that he would give them the farm, and then he would live with them, and they would take care of him until he passed away. And when we left the company housing and went out to the farm, my earliest memories was with meeting that uncle, and who became like a grandfather to me, and living there on the farm.
Okay, that's cool. How long did you live out there?
Let's see, I'll have to think for a minute.
It's okay.
I guess about 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
We lived there, and then we moved. My father bought us a country store out at Wheel, and we moved off of the farm out there to where the store was.
Was this after the war?
That was after the war, yeah, after World War II.
Okay. Well, speaking about World War II, did any of your relatives serve during the war?
Yes.
Okay.
My father was in the Navy, and I don't think I have any other direct relatives that was in there other than some distant cousins.
Okay.
But my father was in it for 2 years. It had been going on a couple of years before he was drafted in, and he served the last 2 years of the war.
Okay. So my follow-up question is, how did the war? Do you recall how the war affected them? I know you were pretty young when it happened, but do you have any stories of that?
Things were awful tight. Food and different things were rationed, and you could only get maybe a certain amount of different things times were awful hard. We lived on the farm, so we had a garden and we had food, but we didn't have many extras at all.
Okay. After your father came back from the war, did it could you see any differences in them, or was there, do you know of a direct impact that it had on your father, the war?
I know that he wasn't satisfied there on the farm anymore, and we moved up to Ohio, where he worked in some part of the auto industry up there for a little while, and then we moved over into Michigan, and he worked. He was still working up there in the auto industry for a while, and then we came back to Wheel, where I finished growing up.
Okay.
We were up there a little less than 2 years, I think.
Okay. So, you said that the war, it made things tighter, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember the point at which things started to get better, or maybe?
About the time that he bought the grocery store, my mother ran the store and he worked at Public Works, so they had two incomes there, and things began to get a little better then, and the economy was picking up at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The war had taken everything to support the war, and now the industries that had built up were producing goods for consumer consumption, and so things were getting a little better. By 1951, 52, somewhere along in there, you could tell things were a little better.
Okay, so you were about the age of it. You're like 12.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
12. Okay, cool. So another big topic that I want to discuss is the civil rights movement. Did it affect you in any way, you or your family? Do you have any stories relating to that time period?
Well, when I grew up, there was only one black family within 10 miles of us, probably, or closer. And we went to separate schools. I never went to school with mixed race all the way through college. The races were separated for their education. I know that in Shelbyville, when I was in high school, that the black school, high school, had a really good football team, and they had as good a crowd of white people at their games as they did black people, because they did have a super team. I remember that. I know I didn't grow up with them. I didn't really just didn't know too much about them because we were separate. And I remember the movement. I remember when Martin Luther King started his movement. I remember when he was assassinated in Memphis. In fact, I was in Memphis 3 weeks later after it happened, and I went to school down there for 3 weeks.
Was there?
And there was a lot of turmoil, and there was areas where we didn't go, weren't parts of the city we couldn't go into because there was still a lot of turmoil there.
A lot of rioting and...
Yeah, some rioting and a lot of it was blocked off. Had horses up, you know.
Was that kind of? I guess was that one of your first experiences with that kind of behavior and that kind of situation where there was like rioting like that?
Yeah, it probably was. That was the first. I had seen some of it, but I hadn't been close to it.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first experience with it, I guess.
Okay. Let's see. So, this might be a little personal, but when the desegregation started, and you said that you were kind of separated from African Americans for the greater portion of your childhood, I guess you would say maybe all of it. When desegregation began, what kind of how did you feel about it, and how did your family feel about it?
There was a lot of talk in the communities and towns and so forth, and I know there was a lot of problems down in Alabama, a lot more than we had in Tennessee, and I personally wasn't really affected by it too much. I was separated or isolated from it, and I would hear things, but as far as being involved personally, I wasn't in anything that I can remember. It just kind of like hearing about the problems over in overseas now, Israel and so forth, the things that are happening over there. We hear it, but we're not personally affected by it. And it's kind of the way that it was when the segregation was, problems were being ironed out. As far as a lot of people, the average man, they just weren't affected by it.
Okay. Was it easy to adjust to?
No, not really.
Okay.
When I was young, even after it started gaining momentum, they went to a different restaurant. They had different restrooms, and they weren't allowed to use the same water fountain in the same restroom as white people. And I don't agree with that. I don't think it should have happened, and I don't know anybody that personally that did agree with it. I mean, there were a lot of things that weren't right that had to be resolved some way or the other, and those were part of them.
Okay. So getting to this area of topic, I guess one of the next things we have is the Vietnam War. What was your opinion of the Vietnam War when it happened?
Well, it's sad that the war took place and nothing was really resolved. It was about the same thing as the Korean War, which had happened a few years earlier. The Korean War, I know you didn't ask about it, but it wasn't resolved. We just kind of went over there and fought for a while, then we backed out and left it like it was for them to resolve it. And the Vietnam War was the same thing. But about that time, when the Vietnam War started, the people who are looked up to, movie stars, major athletes, and so forth. They denounced the war, and they tried to turn, and did turn, a lot of people against it and what was happening over there. Nobody wanted to go to war, but that I know of. But if you have to go, you have to go, and you make the best out of it. But I had a first cousin that was killed over there, and that's sad. But we've probably all got relatives, parents, grandparents, or cousins or something have been killed in some war, and it's just, war is terrible no matter where it is or who it is. We're seeing it now. We see it over in the Ukraine, and we see it over in Israel, and it's terrible. A lot of people are losing their lives, and it's just, I don't know if we'll ever have a time when we don't have war. We haven't in the past. There's always been war, so I don't know if we'll ever do any better.
Yeah, seems like it's a permanent fixture of just humanity, you know. Yeah. So you didn't serve?
No. I was medically unfit, 4F.
Yeah.
At the time, I was called up to go to be examined, and at the time that they called me to go, I was awaiting surgery on my knee. Wasn't getting around very well. I had injured it at work, and I was supposed to have surgery on it, and then they called me up to be examined, and they turned me down because of pending the surgery and because of...
Did you have a family at the time?
No.
You did not?
This was before we were married.
Okay. What was...
Just barely, but before.
Yeah, were you together? Were you with your wife?
We were engaged.
Okay.
At the time, and then after I was turned down, and after I had my surgery, well, we were married shortly after that.
Okay. What was your reaction to... You were drafted, right?
Yes.
What was your reaction to that?
I went.
Were you...
Oh, I didn't want to go.
Yeah,
but
of course.
If they took me, I was going to go.
Okay. Do you have any idea of what you might have done?
Idea of what?
What you might have done?
What I might have done?
Mm-hmm.
Probably I would have been in the supply part because I had taken that in ROTC in college, and I was eligible for a commission, so I could have gone in as a second lieutenant, and my area of education in the service was in the supply.
That was a dangerous position, wasn't it?
Huh?
Wasn't that a dangerous position in that war?
Not as bad as I mean, we would have been supplying guns and ammunition and food and everything to the soldiers, but we wouldn't have been in combat unless we just happened to get caught out in an area when the enemy attacked it or something other.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so my next question would be, I guess, the follow-up or something that was happening parallel to that time. I guess you'd call it the free movement or something, the hippies. Do you recall anything about that?
The what movement?
Like the hippie movement. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't really know the right term for it, but the people that protested the war.
Oh.
The hippies, the kind of free birds.
Oh. Well, I think they should have had to serve themselves.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Okay. My next question I have for you, do you have any firsthand experiences or stories regarding the TVA or its impact on the area?
Well, they're dams that they built all over the area where they supply power to. The dams helped a whole lot in controlling flooding, and I know we have an area right up here in Shelbyville too that benefited from it. I don't know where all it did, but I know that their dams allowed them to control the amount of water rushing down through the rivers and everything. And it helped with flooding. It helped with some of the farmlands. Of course, it created a bunch of jobs too. And I don't know how it. I don't know if it personally affected me in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I know that
it did a lot.
Huh?
It did a lot for the area.
It did a lot.
It also destroyed a lot.
We have the cheapest electric rates in the nation. Mm-hmm. The TVA has helped provide us with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, talking about kind of the development of, since things have happened, since we're talking about the TVA, do you recall the development of cities in Middle Tennessee, such as Murfreesboro?
Development of what?
Like Murfreesboro.
What about it?
What
growth.
Yeah, its growth. What can you recall about its growth? Like what are some of the? It was a lot different 30 or 40 years ago.
Oh yes. I started the college over there in '57, and when I went in, there was hardly anything that's now on South Church Street,
mm-hmm.
going on 231. There was nothing until you got to the square, hardly going in that way. And it's just built up tremendously. Murfreesboro is still growing leaps and bounds, and it's, every time you go over there, there's new stuff that you see. When I went over there to college, it was about 25 miles from Shelbyville to Murfreesboro. Now it's probably 17 or 18 from city limits to city limits. It's grown out several miles each way, mainly from Murfreesboro, but Shelbyville's growing now too, out that way now too. It's just everything has changed and progressed. The cars, you're not asking for this, but I've seen when we lived on the farm, it was not unusual to see people coming by in wagons.
Really?
And mules pulling the wagons, going out to wheel where the stores were to get some groceries or something.
Yeah.
Quite a bit of that. And then we saw the first car. I remember the first car we had. My sister wrecked it.
Oh, really?
She was in my daddy's lap, and he was letting her guide it, and she got a hold of the steering wheel and turned it off the road and into a tree.
Oh no.
That was Eloise, my second sister.
Goodness.
And that was our first car. And
didn't last long.
We ran a store out there at Wheel for a few years, and we lived just about 100 yards from the school, so that was very close and very convenient for us. We walked to school, and we didn't have to get up too early because we were right there at the school and catch a bus or anything like that. But I don't know what all you want, or
No, you did good.
I can tell you other things.
Yeah, keep coming.
The school, there were where I started the grade school, there were 3 classrooms, and we had coal stoves, a wood stove or a coal burning stove, one in each classroom to give us heat for the classroom. And it was in the back of the room, and if you sat at the back of the room, you were warm in the winter. If you sat in the front, you were cold.
Yeah.
And I built a fire before school. I built a fire in each one of the 3 stoves for 1 year, maybe 2 years. I did that. But I would have to get corn cobs and soak them in kerosene, and then I'd take them up there to the school. I'd put 3 or 4 of them in the bottom of the stove, and then I'd put coal in on top of it, and those kerosene cobs would combust the coal and start it to burning. I'd have to clean the ashes out every day and take them out, and I did that before school. I had to do it early enough before school that it would be warm enough for the students coming in.
Did you take it upon yourself to do that?
Pardon?
Did you take it upon yourself to do that?
I got a quarter.
Oh, okay.
I got a nickel a day from each stove, so I got 15 cents a day.
That's pretty good.
It was pretty good at that time.
Yeah.
15 cents.
What could you get for 15
times
cents?
5.
What could you get for that?
Pardon?
What could you get for that?
For 15 cents?
Mm-hmm.
I could buy a cold drink for a nickel, or a big candy bar for a nickel. So I could get a cold drink and a candy bar and a box of popcorn or a pack of chewing gum or something. Those 3 things I could get for 15 cents. Or I could go to the movie theater for a dime. One theater, the one in Shelbyville was a dime, and the one in Lewisburg was 11 cents at the time.
Oh. Bougier.
So I could take a dime for that. I could take a quarter, and I could go to the movie, and I could get a cold drink and a box of popcorn for a quarter.
You can get a piece of gum for a quarter now. A single piece of gum. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna ask you since I know a little bit about your background already. I have some questions here that are kind of aimed towards you because I know you were a pastor. How did the religious landscape in Tennessee evolve during your time as a pastor? Or after, you could say. I mean, I know you're still involved, so.
Yeah. Well, most people went to church. It was a time of worship and dedication, and also a time of visitation to see your neighbors and friends that you hadn't seen for a week, maybe. Mm-hmm. And so everybody pretty much went to church some church on Sunday, and the Easter service was special, and the Christmas service was special, and all, but it got to where there were more things, more activities, trips, Bible school. Those things got more prevalent as I grew and as I aged. But by the time that I became a minister, there were all sorts of activities, and there were mission trips and things like that to get people involved and to encourage them to participate in church. The classes became more divided, more age-oriented, different classes, different age groups, and so forth. Of course, we had bigger buildings and more classrooms and things than they did 60, 70 years ago. So we could do that. We could do more things when I was pastoring. I think now there has been a falling away from the church. Where we met and socialized a long time ago, now there's too many other activities, too many other things, and too many other ways for people to socialize. And the church, I think, has suffered from that. Couldn't tell you what they can do to combat it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Were there any significant religious or spiritual movements that took place in Tennessee that you can recall?
I guess Billy Graham crusades were about as big a spiritual movements as you'd find. It was always a big thing when he came to Nashville or somewhere close and held one of his crusades. And later on there were other ministries that did the same thing, but his I guess was the most well known of any of them.
Okay. So now I'm kind of getting to more of like the, I guess you would say the 80s and 90s. So there are a few other kind of wars that we were involved in, like the war in the Middle East when we first got introduced out there. Do you have any connections to that? Were any people that your family members, were they involved in that? Do you have any?
Yes, we had a son who was in Desert Storm, and he was over there for maybe a year and a half, and so we were very concerned about him, very worried about him being over there, and a bunch with all those crazy people.
Yeah.
And they made IEDs, and then they had the ones that the suicide vest where they strapped bombs to themselves and to little children and everything. And so we couldn't help but worry about him and the whole time that he was over there, and pray that he'd get back home okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And we're thankful for that.
That's good.
That was our oldest son. Uh,
What was
Ken-
his name?
Kenneth Ray Neill the second.
Okay. So I've kind of gone through all the questions that I have for you that I'm gonna kind of like bounce around now. I was going in order of a timeline, but
Okay.
we did that kind of quicker than I was thinking we were gonna do it. So I'm gonna just kind of ask some general questions. So I might bounce around back and
Okay.
forth. So the World Fair came to Tennessee. It visited Tennessee.
Yeah. Yes.
Did you go to see that when it came?
Yes.
You did? Okay. Do you have any memories of that?
Well, I guess it was Ken and I that went up there to that, and we had been to the state fair several times, and the World Fair was about the same thing, just a little bigger.
Really? What,
Yeah.
did they have a lot of like innovation things, like new technologies that they were showing off?
Well, if they did, I didn't see that.
You didn't see that part? Okay.
I can't remember too much of what we did. We weren't up there that long. I don't know if we were there one day or 2 days. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's one of the questions I had about that. So, Tennessee, is prone to kind of turbulent or just very uncertain weather, I guess you would say. Have there been any kind of crazy weather events that you remember?
Yeah. When we lived on the farm, we had a storm cellar. And when the weather would get bad, we'd go get in the cellar.
Really?
And we would carry candles or kerosene lamp down there with us, so we didn't have to sit there in total darkness. And we'd sit down there until the weather blew over. And then when we moved out to, we didn't have any problems while I was out there with the weather that I can think of. But since we have been here now, we've had lightning strike the house 2 or 3 times, and we've had 2 tornadoes that have come through and did a little bit of damage, minor damage here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we have turbulent weather here in Tennessee. Right now, I think the Tornado Alley, which used to be in Oklahoma, has moved to Tennessee, it seems like.
I've heard about that. I think so. Do you remember anything about the flood? Was it 2000? I don't remember what year it was. Do you remember? I was young. I'd say probably like 2009, 2010, 2011, somewhere in there.
You could probably pull a picture. You don't want to mess up the question. There was a bad flood in the 40s up there at Shelbyville. It flooded the whole area somewhere in the 40s, and then there was another one in the 50s, 56, 57. One of those years there was a bad flood up there. One of my classmates drowned in that flood. And the one that you're talking about, I don't know when, 2000 what? It
was flooding down the interstate, and the cars were. Don't you remember? It was washing the cars every which way. A schoolhouse was washed out in the road.
Where?
Down here at Nashville. Don't you remember?
No. I don't.
It's okay. It's cool. Thank you. It's okay. Let's see here. You attended college,
Yeah.
didn't you? Have you seen? Well, I guess you were only in college for a certain amount of time, but to your knowledge, have you seen any kind of changes in higher education?
Well, yes.
And
It was well. When I went, it was Middle Tennessee State College.
okay,
When I graduated, it was Middle Tennessee State University.
okay,
So it
I
went
didn't
from
know it
a
was called
college.
that.
It went from a college to a university.
okay.
And before it was Middle Tennessee State College, it was Middle Tennessee State Normal, and it was a teacher's school.
Oh,
It was known for training teachers, school teachers. So then it went to a general college, and then it went to the university, and you can get a degree, I guess, in about anything now over there. I don't know.
mm-hmm.
But it was the areas of education was limited when I was there. There were a lot of degrees that you couldn't get. They just didn't have that option then. So it's changed in the fact that it's grown and there's so many more things, and the technology has opened a lot of fields too. But the schools themselves have changed in other ways too. The dormitories, there were 3 ladies' dormitories on one side of the college, and there were two men or 2 boys college dormitories on the other side, and there was no commingling of the
Yeah.
sexes at that time. You could go in to the lobby and pick up your date, but you couldn't go past that lobby there, and you
Really?
and it had to be, they had to sign in and out, and so I know that all that's changed. I don't know what's allowed and what's normal over there now, because I haven't been in so long. But just from what I hear from my children and grandchildren and everything,
What did you?
I know it's quite different.
Yeah, I'm sure it is quite different. That sounds kind of strange. What did you get your degree in?
Think of what?
What did you get your degree in at MTSU?
My degree was in education.
Education. So you became a teacher?
Did I?
Yeah. So you taught for some
I
time.
taught for 2.5 years.
Okay. Where did you teach?
I taught at Unionville.
Okay.
I taught the 8th grade, and then I taught. I had a minor in PE, so I taught some PE. The high school and the 7th and 8th grade. Well, it was all from 1 through 12 down there at Unionville at that time. So I taught some high school classes too. I taught PE classes, and I taught a shop class in high school my last year.
Okay.
Down there.
So I know it was. I know it's different from when I was in school, from when you were teaching. At that time, was there religion or in the school? Like, were you able to talk about that? Was there prayer, or a time of like a moment of silence or something?
Not when I was teaching. We
Okay.
didn't do that.
You didn't. Okay.
No. When I had been in school myself, we did. We had Bible reading and and prayer every day, I think.
Okay. But they had already taken it out at that point when you came back?
I guess they had, because I don't remember. I know we didn't in my classroom, and I don't remember seeing it in any of the others. They may have done it in the lower grades 1 through 6 or something, but I don't know that they did or didn't.
Were they pretty strict back then on what you could say, or was it?
Oh yes,
They were.
they were strict. You could get paddling.
The teacher could.
No,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, you're good.
The teacher could paddle. You meant strict about what I could say?
Yes, sir.
No,
They weren't.
no.
You could pretty much say anything.
Yeah,
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
yeah,
So you could talk about God, or you could
Yeah.
talk about okay.
yeah.
Okay. But there was, I don't know what kind of punishment they call that.
Capital or corporal.
Corporal.
Not capital. That would have been bad.
Yeah, that would have been really bad.
Corporal punishment. Yes,
There was.
there was. I spanked several.
You did.
Yes,
With a paddle?
yes.
With a paddle, okay. That's funny.
You know Ernie Creek up here?
Mm-hmm.
And I broke the paddle on him, and he kept the paddle. He's still had it for a long time. I don't
Really?
know if he still got it or not, but he told me he had it one time.
You spanked him?
Yeah.
Really? That's funny. I did not know that. Okay, so let's see. You're from the Shelbyville area.
Yeah.
You know it's the walking horse capital of the world?
Yeah.
The world, okay. Did you ever go to any of those horse shows? Or has it been pretty much the same? Has it always has been? Or has it changed?
It's changed.
It has, okay.
Yeah. You say, how's it changed?
Yes, sir, if you could tell. Yeah, for sure.
Well, of course, it's grown from one ring to several rings. They've got one major ring, and then they've got an inside arena. Then they've got 2 warm-up rings out there that have grown. All that has grown. And they used to do just about whatever they wanted to the horses to make them walk. They sored their feet, and they drove nails into their hooves and quicked them like you would break your fingernail in a quick. Well, they would quick the horses with nails to make them pick their feet up higher, and they broke their tails, and they may still do that, I don't know. But they did a lot of things to abuse the horses, and I don't know what organization
PETA?
it was that brought enough light to bear that the government stepped in and started inspecting them, and they have stopped a lot of the abuse.
Yeah.
They haven't completely wiped it out, but it's a whole lot better for the horses.
They weigh their feet down now, is that what
They still have them built up real big where they stand up high in front, and they put weight on them.
they get used to that weight?
To make them have an unnatural gait, swing their feet more. They've been doing that, but it's not as bad as it was. No, I saw them abuse them up there. I worked up there for 14 years in one of the food booths each year, and we saw a lot of things up there that was bad.
Yeah. Well, to kind of like shift the topic a little bit, make it a little bit lighter. So agriculture has been a big part of Tennessee. I guess you could say its economy. How has it changed?
Oh, it's really changed.
It has.
Yeah. I've done a little bit of plowing behind a mule
Oh, really?
myself. Yeah. And not a whole lot, but a little bit in gardens. No big fields.
Mm.
And I've seen it. I drove tractors when I was in high school for a man that I worked for one summer, all summer long. And I drove a tractor and did most anything with it. It was a big diesel tractor. And at that time, it was a big tractor. And now it's not even comparable to the tractors that you see out there now.
Yeah.
They're so much bigger and got more wheels on them, more pulling power and everything. The combines, when I was a kid, had an operator that sat back at the back and sewed the sacks. It come down into a sack, and we took the sack off and sewed them. We had ears on them, on each side end of the sack out here, and then dumped them off physically. Now the combines, they ride around in an air-conditioned cab, and it goes into a bin instead of the sacks, and then after the bin gets full, they pull up beside a big truck and offload it into a truck. So that's a big change. And now, a friend of mine, he just passed away, but he had equipment that was controlled by satellite.
Really?
And when he wanted to do something in a field, he did it on his computer, and his machine would go to the field and do whatever needed to be done out there and come
Who's
back
this?
to the barn. Bill Gold.
Oh,
He
okay.
died about 2 years ago, I guess.
Okay.
But
That's really interesting.
he farmed in a big way.
Yeah.
He rented land and his equipment. I guess his sons are still using it and still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But they just punch the dimensions in or tell the field or where it is or where to go, and the equipment goes out there by itself and does what he tells it to do and comes back.
That is
Crazy,
Really,
isn't
that
it?
is very cool. I did not know that
Yeah.
things existed
So
like that.
farming has come a long way.
Yeah, it sounds like it has.
In my lifetime, from the mule to satellite control.
That's
farming.
pretty impressive. That is, I did not know that. Okay, that's cool. So this is going to be a big jump to my next question.
Okay.
They have nothing to do with each other. But it's a very big subject in not really Tennessee history, but American history. But 9/11. I know we're kind of it's becoming more recent now. 9/11, and we're in the 2000s. But what kind of memory? Where were you when that happened? I guess that's
9/11.
not when 9/11 happened. Yes, sir.
I don't know where I was. Well, when it happened, I guess I was at work.
Okay.
I was an industrial engineer over here at Samsonite in Murfreesboro. And that happened in 2001, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
No, I was working in Nashville at that time.
Okay.
And I probably didn't hear about it until I got home.
What was the general feeling at that time?
It was just disastrous. It was hard to comprehend that something like that could happen. That was when the towers. Okay,
Yes, sir.
I'm getting it all together now.
Okay, yeah.
I'm old.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
It takes a while. Oh, okay. No, I was home when that happened. I don't know why, but I saw it hit. I saw one of the planes hit
On
the
live?
towers.
You saw it live?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I did.
And that's when you knew this was an attack.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and what's happening?
Yeah.
What's going on? Is this the end, or is something else going to happen? It was, you know.
Did you feel unsafe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. At that point in time, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, sure.
And they said that one also went into the Pentagon, and one crashed into a field, and you know, it was just one bad report after another.
Yeah.
And it was very alarming.
I bet. Yeah. I bet so you were working in Nashville at that time?
No, I was
No.
retired
Oh, okay.
at that time.
Okay.
I had just retired. I retired in 99.
Mm-hmm.
99, yeah.
Okay. So you said the feelings. What was the word that you used to describe the general feeling of that? I guess that week after that.
After all their destruction was over with, then there was a lot of anger.
A united anger, right?
Yeah, yes. Everybody, I think, was very angry about what had happened. It wouldn't have been a good thing to be a Middle Easterner at that time. I don't think. There was a lot of bad feeling toward them.
Yeah.
And probably groups were discriminated against that
Sure.
had nothing to do with it, but they had that look about them, you know, of that area, and they probably suffered from it, because I know everybody was really angry about what had happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, is that probably the closest that you kind of saw everyone, like the nation, kind of come together at that time?
I'd say it was. At that time, I don't think we've ever been any more united than we were at that time. Maybe just after Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
But I barely remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd say that's the most united that I can remember the country being.
Do you feel like there's been kind of... This is kind of a general question. It's broad. But do you kind of feel like that there has been a change in the air since then? Do you feel like since then that's kind of been like... You know, when you're a child and you grow older and you become an adult, you kind of view the world differently. Do you feel like after that point, there's kind of been like a different vibe in the country since then? Like maybe we're not...
The country is changing, and it has changed since then.
Like maybe before then we kind of had a naive sense of that we were safe.
Yeah.
And that nothing can happen to us, we were America. But after that point, it was kind of like, whoa.
Yeah. And then all of the shootings, the high school shootings and the grammar schools and all the school shootings that have happened, and bars and things now. We used to have a sense of security and safety and so forth, and we don't have that anymore.
It doesn't feel the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen or when or where now. You don't have that sense of safety that we grew up with.
Mm-hmm. It's a much different place.
Huh?
It's a like totally different place from when the America you grew up in to what you're living in now. Yeah. Well, I feel like that's a good point to end it on. I feel like, how old are you?
84.
84 years old. Okay. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to sit down with me and answer some of my questions I had. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope I've helped you.
You certainly have. Thank you.
You're welcome.